Welcome to the Mothers Leading the Way video series. Join us as we explore practical tips and tricks based on research to manage the many roles that working mothers play.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mothers Leading the Way, our video series in which we talk to experts about how we can be our best us as working mothers and balancing the multiple roles that we play. And I am so excited to join you today with Daisy Dowling, who is going to really talk to us about a lot of different things. So I really just want to kind of jump right in it and let her introduce herself and her professional work. So if you'll just give us a brief introduction, and that way we know just how wonderful you are.
Well, thank you so much for having me with you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Daisy Dowling. I'm an executive coach who specializes in supporting working parents. 11 years ago, I was working as an executive coach, leadership development expert, career expert inside a big successful corporation. And so many of the clients that I was working with had questions for me that I didn't have answers for. And those questions weren't just about career or how to get promoted or how to do well in that big meeting, but how to do those career things, how to deliver on the job and performance-wise, while also being present and loving caregivers. Now, I didn't have answers for them at the time. And when I became a parent myself, I have two little girls now who are 9 and 11. I realized I didn't have answers to these questions either. How was I supposed to manage my day-to-day calendar? How was I supposed to tell my boss's boss that I was still interested in promotion, even though I was just back from parental leave? Now, maybe some of these things resonate with you. As a career expert, I was very keenly interested in finding answers and solutions and different techniques and tools and self-hacks and life hacks and professional hacks that would help push me and the people I was supporting forward. So very long story short, I went out and I began interviewing other working parents, both men and women in all different fields and family structures and phases of career from all different backgrounds and beliefs, and asked them what works. How do you bridge career and caregiving? What allows you to succeed on the job while being that present, loving caregiver you want to be and staying healthy and whole in yourself all at the same time? And very long story short, it's now my job to help people do that in the day-to-day. And I do that as an executive coach with working parents one-to-one. And I run workshops and seminars for working parents, groups inside companies, organizations, community groups, and so forth. And it's my focus and my mission is to help people bridge those two all-important spheres of their life in a way that's feasible, that's sustainable, and that gives them confidence in the short and in the long term.
And can you tell us a little bit, just at least the title of the book that you've written?
I published a book in 2021 called Work Parent, The Complete Guide to Succeeding on the Job, Staying True to Yourself, and Raising Happy Kids. And I joke, although it's not a joke, that it's the book that I wrote because I really needed to read it. It's like what to expect when you're expecting for the working parent, a complete how-to guide that really takes you from how to announce that you're expecting all the way through the teenage years, and covers all the different twists and turns that we all have to navigate as working parents, whether that's advocating for a new project at work, whether that's figuring out how to manage our time, or even to get dinner on the table at the end of a long work day. And so that book was published, and I'm also the series editor of the Harvard Business Review Working Parent Collection of Books, which is a set of anthologies of Harvard Business Review articles that really speak to the challenges and unique needs of people who are combining kids and career.
Perfect. And I can, as someone who has read the book, I can tell you it's wonderful. So our next question that we have is, through your consultation and coaching experience, what are some common obstacles that working mothers face?
Yeah, that's a great question, because sometimes as a working mom, you look at the challenge of your day-to-day life or longer-term career and family management, and it just feels like one big challenge. How do we navigate this? But with my coaching clients, I like to try and break things down, because if we can break things down and look at a discrete part of the problem, we can then start identifying some solutions, some techniques that will help you make progress against this big challenge. Now, the first obstacle or thing that's hard for working moms, and it's hard for me as it is for you too, is what I call the time challenge. Now, I don't know you well. We haven't met before. We're just talking right now. But I'm going to guess that there is a lot more on your to-do list and a lot more in your calendar than you can comfortably cover in the course of a day, a week, a month, a year.
Absolutely.
There is
The
just
eternal list.
the eternal list. We're responsible for so much. And one of the things that has probably fueled your success to date is that you're really good at burning the midnight oil, pushing through, getting more onto the calendar. Maybe you have special techniques and hacks that you use, like color coding your calendar to try and just fit everything in. But as a working parent now, as a working mom, I want you to think about taking a new strategy or approach. Instead of just soldiering through and trying to fit more in, I want you to take a step back and to try and take some things out, to pull the time challenge up by the root instead of just kind of persevering through it. And here's how I want you to approach this. The next time you get maybe 15 minutes free, you can do this pretty quickly. I want you to grab your last week's calendar and your last week's to-do list and a red pen, real or virtual. And I want you to simply read over everything that was on that task list. And I want you to read over everything that landed on your calendar. And when you see an item, a meeting, an obligation, a to-do, a task, whatever, when you see something on those couple of lists that just feasibly, you could have deferred, delayed, avoided in the first place, maybe done in slightly less time, duped and revised from another piece of work, gotten a little bit of extra help on, whatever the case, I want you to just circle it or put a mark next to it. Now, there's not going to be a ton of things there, right? Because you're already really, really efficient with your time. But there will be some things that you'll put a note next to. And when you're done reading over that to-do list and that calendar, I want you to step back and to look at all the different markings you've got on there, everything that you've circled, and notice the themes and the through lines. Because every single one of us has certain ways that we use or maybe overuse our time. Maybe you're a bit of a perfectionist and you sort of hover on messages before just sending them off and wordsmithing them. Or maybe you tend to be a little bit of a people pleaser and always say yes when you're asked to volunteer for, the school event, that kind of thing. With those insights in mind, I want you to then pivot to your next week's calendar and your next week's to-do list. So for the 7 days that are coming up. And with that insight, hey, maybe I, tend to say yes a little bit too easily. I want you to go through your calendar and I want you to preemptively spot things that maybe you could avoid, defer, delegate, say no to, etc. Now, you're not going to find 50% of your time free. You're not going to find like these huge empty spots in your calendar because that's not realistic. But what you will find are small bites, maybe small tasks that you don't have to do, or meetings where you could get the notes from somebody else. Whatever the case, I want you to push yourself a little bit to try and find those bites of time. Because that small kind of wiggle room, those small 30 minutes here, don't have to do a small task there. Those are the things that allow you to take working parenthood from all out overwhelming to merely really demanding, which it always will be, but merely really demanding. And I want you to think about trying to win yourself back a certain amount of time. Maybe it's 3% of your time or 5% of your time. But realizing that 5% of your time, it doesn't sound like a lot, but 5% of your time is 2 hours next week that you could spend getting a good start on that new project that's going to be really tough, or that you could spend snuggling with your toddler before he goes to bed and just having that wonderful connective time. It's going to be a meaningful chunk, even if the percentage itself is small. So that's one of the first things that I suggest, is really kind of leaning into the fact that you don't have enough time and really trying to pull that time problem up by the roots.
And I think it's so important for us to realize that every little bit helps.
Absolutely.
And we tend to say, oh, it's just 15 minutes, it's just an hour. But we make profound impacts in our work and our family life in an hour. And we can make memories that last forever. in that hour.
Yeah, or you could get to the gym or
Yeah.
sleep for an extra hour or do something that simply allows this whole endeavor of a demanding job or career and being a really awesome mom to be that much more sustainable.
Yes. Yes. And I love that you emphasize that, because when I thought those memories that last a lifetime, I was thinking of that snuggling with the toddler. That it doesn't have to be, oh, we're going here. That it is those opportunities to just be and not be distracted or not be pulled in so many directions that can be so profound in our relationship.
Absolutely. Those small day-to-day things like having dinner with your family, they can really make a lot of difference in your life and in theirs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, how do these obstacles directly impact the working mother's career trajectory, and their ability to pursue leadership opportunities?
Yeah. So what I see with so many of my coaching clients is because the demands of working motherhood are so high, that there is often a lot of thought, introspection, maybe self-questioning or self-doubt about how am I going to be able to take on more, raise my hand, take on a bigger team, a larger scope of client coverage, more responsibility. And as a result, many, not all, but many of the clients that I work with are a little bit cautious, a little bit concerned. Now, over time, the way that that can play forward for you in your career, if you don't raise your hand for this project, if you're a little bit concerned about that, and for good reasons, and I understand why, but those things can accumulate. And over time, you can find yourself maybe not in the role or not in the position that you want because you've been thoughtful and maybe a little bit cautious about raising your hand and trying to take on more because you don't want to swamp the ship. Now, one of the things, if we were in a one-to-one coaching session here, I would ask you to do, if this is the case for you, is to really kind of think through at each stage of your career as you do have some of these decision moments or if you do have some of these opportunities to really take time to play forward what they might look like in your day-to-day. Because very often when you play things forward, you realize that they're not quite as scary or consequential as you might imagine. So let's say, for example, that you do have the opportunity to take on a little bit more, to take on a new project that's going to be really demanding. Well, think through how that might play in your day-to-day. Is there some additional help that you might be able to get on the home front to free you up to do that little bit extra at work? Are there different ways maybe as you take on that new project that you could negotiate with your boss or with colleagues to get more help and support onto your team so that you have more leverage and you can delegate more? Maybe remind yourself too that this project, this new opportunity, it's not necessarily a binding or forever one. If there are different ways in which it's affecting your ability to parent in the way that you want, you don't have to hold on to that job forever. You could always make a tweak, make a shift, decide to, step back a little bit, scale back. In other words, by thinking through in this way, by playing things forward, it helps you examine the possibilities and the risks and the way to manage around some of those risks that you might naturally be thinking about as a working mom. So kind of unspool some of your decisions out into the future and think what might allow you to support them instead of thinking, I shouldn't take that on. That doesn't mean that you have to raise your hand for every opportunity. I'm a big believer that we know ourselves best. So do what works for you, but don't find yourself playing defense all the time either.
Right. And I have found that oftentimes in taking on a new project, a new task, even if it's a temporary, where I will be stepping back into a position that I kind of know and understand, I learn so much in doing that that it makes my my normal tasks easier. I have more inside knowledge and more understanding of the process. So I actually save time by having that
Yeah.
kind of brief time with this additional role. It actually, when I kind of think through long term, it actually creates more time overall. So,
Absolutely. Taking on a manager role, for example, might be really daunting. But maybe as a manager, you get to set the schedule and allocate workload in a way that ultimately gives you more flexibility. So that's absolutely right to think through the sort of total consequences. And if you feel very, pinched for time, if you're imagining, gosh, how am I possibly going to fit everything in if I do take that professional step or that new job, for example? It might be a dream job, but it's a little bit scary or daunting as a working parent to take it on. One very specific technique that to think about using that can be really helpful is what I call the 3 bucket technique. And I want you to think of everything that you have to do, that you're responsible for, as really landing at both at home and at work, as really landing in one of 3 buckets. There's stuff that you yourself have to do that nobody else can do, that you have to own, that you have to touch. Maybe it's preparing a certain sort of budget report at work, or snuggling with your child before bed. You can't send somebody in to do that on your behalf. It's what you have to do. The second bucket are things that you can delegate or get help on, but then you'll stay close to and oversee. And that's certainly true for a lot of things that you might have in terms of your, professional workload. And then the third bucket are things that you want to get rid of, that you can not do, that you can delegate out, and that you can basically say goodbye to. Now, each and every one of us owes it to ourselves as we advance in our careers and as we move forward over time to keep thinking about what's in each bucket. And you don't want to make or need to make radical changes, but to keep yourself moving forward and creating more capacity for different things in your life at work and at home. Try taking something from that first bucket, I have to do it myself, and putting it into the second, I can get some help on this. And then taking something from the second and putting it into the third. I'm going to delegate this off, or I'm going to, stop doing it. I'm going to get out of the business of being responsible for this. And if you can keep just occasionally putting something from one bucket into the next, it gives you just that much capacity to take on something new, something different, to take on that next challenge, whatever it might be, or to create more time for yourself at work and at home.
absolutely. I also really think it helps us to reflect on what are the things that we have to do versus we think we have to do. And it gives us that space to maybe reconsider that in light of the overall.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It forces us to look at what we're doing objectively and to bring a fresh perspective to it.
Wonderful. So how can these obstacles directly impact the well-being of the working mother?
So when we're facing a lot of obstacles day in and day out, and when we're really, really hardworking, committed, diligent, conscientious people, and we're still holding those obstacles, the really natural outcome of that situation, of that environment, is a little bit of erosion of confidence. So most of the working moms that I talk to, and I feel this way myself sometimes too, will think, gosh, I'm smart, I'm hardworking, I really want to be a great mom, I really want to be a tremendous professional, I want to do well on the job, I'm committed to it. So what's wrong with me that I can't make these two things come together? Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. It's just that you have two really, really big sets of responsibilities. Raising human beings, which is a huge job, as we all know. And then whatever your actual job is on top of that. Now, your job was already, challenging or demanding before you threw a baby on top of there, and it only escalates from there. So one way to rewire back some of that confidence, which is so important to feeling ready, to feeling on your front foot, to feeling a sense of momentum in both spheres of your life. One of the things that I'd like you to consider doing is to keeping, in addition to your to-do list, a new kind of list, which is an already done list. And your already done list is where you put things that you've already done. And those can be things big, small. It could be you threw in a load of laundry, you got a big project done, on time and under budget. You had a really great meeting with somebody at work who it's really hard to have a good meeting with. And we all have colleagues, or we all know people like that. Or you were great with your 12-year-old and helping her with her algebra homework after school. Whatever the case, throw that on your already done list. And then when you're feeling a little bit, not so confident or a little bit overwhelmed, I want you to pull out that already done list and simply spend a few minutes reading over it. Because when you do, you will realize that you are doing, accomplishing, moving through so much every day. And the totality of your commitment and of your achievements will become really, really clear to you. And with that sense of accomplishment and momentum, you'll be able to go back at it in terms of everything you've got going on at work and at home with a sense of, I'm doing the right things, I'm getting a lot done, and I have the confidence to face what's now coming.
Wonderful. I also keep what I call a yay me list of when I get a compliment or a congratulations letter or some type of positive feedback. I kind of keep that in a special location so that on those days when it seems like everything's gone wrong, I can look at that and go, you know what? I do a pretty good job. So I do think just having something tangible that we can look at provides such positive feedback for us when we are feeling that kind of attack, even if it's internal, that we can kind of counter that. So I love though the already done idea. Nobody even has to say anything about it. I can be proud of the things that I've already done and already accomplished. So,
exactly. Another great and very quick technique for feeling a bit more confident in the day-to-day is shifting your sense of self-evaluation from the daily to the weekly or the monthly. So by that, I mean, and I think we all do this unconsciously and quite a bit. When you are ready to go to bed in the evening and it's probably pretty late at night because you've got a lot on, and you think back over the last, 12 to 18 hours that you've been awake and doing so much at work and with your family, it's really easy to get into scorekeeping mode and to say to yourself, oh, well, I worked late again and I didn't get dinner with the kids. That's the kind of mom I am. And you start beating yourself up about it. Or the reverse, you went to the school concert, but you didn't get to finish the project that you had been meaning to finish. Whatever it is, one single day is a really, really hard period of time because it's so short to feel like you're doing your absolute best as a professional and as a mom. So try opening the aperture a little bit and saying, how am I doing this week? Yeah, okay, maybe yesterday I had to work late and I missed dinner with the kids. But the other 3 nights so far this week, I made dinner and I sat down and we had a really great time as a family. So instead of beating yourself up or feeling sort of diminished or guilty or whatever, open that aperture up and think about the week, the month, even the year sometimes. And that will give you a much better overall holistic perspective on how you're doing and how you're delivering against what's really important.
Absolutely. And I do think so many of the tasks and roles that we're in are not daily. They are more long-term, continuous. If we look at kind of stereotypically, at least mothers work at home, it tends to be ongoing. So if we're only looking at a single day, it fails to capture the true nature of those tasks. So that's a wonderful idea.
Okay.
So how have the past few years, we know that it has been challenging in numerous ways. How have they shifted the obstacles that working mothers face?
Well, the past couple of years have had many benefits, I think, for working mothers. So the challenges that we do face have become a lot more visible because people can see into our homes, into our Zoom backgrounds, and really see everything that we're dealing with if we're working remote. And there's just been a lot more conversation about working parenthood. So that's a positive. What is challenging, and it can look like a benefit, but also be really, really challenging, is that there really are no boundaries anymore between the different spheres of our life. Now, I love the phrase work-life integration because it really speaks to the idea that I believe in, that you're one person doing 2 important and distinct roles, but that you stay one person at all times and you can really bring those 2 different spheres together. I think the challenge now, though, is that there's absolutely no kind of, demarcation between those two different spheres. And so you may find yourself, because you're working remote or maybe working in person, really not having a lot of boundary between the two. Your kids are text messaging you while you're, on site at work, and you have to be thinking about what they need from you. Or you're at home and, your kids are running around in the background while you're in a meeting or on a Zoom. That means that you feel like you're doing two jobs at all times. It means you can do things a little bit more easily. Technology is great, and being able to sort of integrate your life is great. But it means for a lot of us that we have this constant sense of pressure that I need to be doing both the mom job and my regular job, my day job, at the same time. Now, the thing is, nobody wants 50% of you. Nobody wants a distracted parent or, a multitasking worker who's thinking about home, etc. And so for ourselves and for the people in our lives, our colleagues, our kids, it can be really, really helpful to think about putting some of those boundaries, even in an artificial or small way, putting some of those boundaries back. Now, that can look as simple as saying to yourself, before 8:30 in the morning, I'm not going to open my laptop. I am in full mom mode until 8:30 or after a certain point in the evening. Or it can be saying to yourself, you know what, as soon as I, arrive at the office, I'm going to take a minute, take an extra, just a couple of seconds, take a deep breath before going into my workplace and get myself into my professional mindset and really think, how am I going to be focused and present and delivering against the job at hand? Or maybe it's something even smaller. Maybe you say to yourself, if you're working remote, I'm only going to be in professional mode when I have my blazer on or when I'm wearing shoes. And as soon as I take them off, I can permission myself to be in parenting mode, in mom mode. Those sound small and they're goofy, and they kind of are. But what they allow you to do is to be fully present, focused, and feel like you're top of game, like you're in full professional mode or full mom mode. And that's where you're going to be a lot more effective. And you're also going to be a lot more confident if you can create some of those boundaries and then be able to move across them in a quick way, but in a very gentle and effective way too.
Wonderful. So, obviously work from home, as you said, has many benefits and costs for working mothers. What do you think the pros and cons are for working parents with young children?
Well, I say this as somebody who works from home myself. I think the just wonderful benefit is the physical proximity to and availability to our children. So if you're at home when they come home from school, or you have a caregiver in another part of the house and you have a home office, being able to drop in on your kids and simply be available to them is wonderful. On the other hand, though, and that's a huge benefit, but on the other hand, I also want you to consider the professional impact of being remote, maybe all or most or, some significant portion of the time. Think if some of your other colleagues are working in person and if you are remote, or if all of your colleagues are working remote all the time. What does that mean in terms of your relationships with your colleagues? It can be a little easy when you're working remote to only deal with people when you technically need to deal with them, when you have a piece of information you need to grab from them, when you have a project that you're passing off to them, when you need to collaborate around a certain, business outcome or professional outcome. As opposed to when you're physically in a work environment, you're sort of, walking down the hall to get coffee and chatting with people as you go and developing relationships that are a little bit wider bandwidth than you might have if you're remote. So if you are working remote, it doesn't mean that it's bad. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I do want you to be conscious and deliberate about how you build relationships and career capital and your personal brand with your colleagues. And make certain that the physical distance or the fact that you're doing it over a screen instead of in person or in the cube next to somebody isn't in any way changing the value or the quality of those relationships. I also want you to challenge yourself to think if working remote is the right solution for you over time as your children's needs change. So one very common thing I see is parents of very small children, maybe you're just back from parental leave and you're working remote and you can be close to the baby, that's great. What's maybe not so great or not so easy, as wonderful as your children are, is when they become mobile, really vocal, active toddlers who don't understand that mom's on a Zoom or that your office door is closed. And all of a sudden, instead of work from home or remote work being this wonderful benefit, it can be really distracting and difficult, both for you and for your child, because they don't understand why you're sequestered in a different room or not available to them. So think about this part of flexibility in a flexible way. What's working for me now? Is it supporting and serving me with the needs that I have and the needs that my children have right now? And how am I going to use this resource in a way that really benefits my career longer term?
Wonderful, wonderful. So working mothers typically report kind of being on at all times. So how can they advocate for work-life integration?
Well, I think one of the most important things you can do in terms of advocating for that extra time for not being on at all times is to really set some boundaries for yourself. Now, I want you to think back to the last time, maybe it was this weekend, maybe it was a while ago, that you took some time just for yourself. And even as I say that, my guess is that you're having a little bit of a reaction to it, thinking me time, downtime, relaxation time. It all of those different ways of labeling that idea of being not on, of being off from work, doing something for yourself. It feels a little bit selfish. I would love for you to start to have greater work-life integration and to not be on all the time by thinking about doing some stuff for yourself, time for yourself, whatever that looks like. It can be, chatting with a friend, exercising, spiritual practices, whatever it is, the thing that really fuels you, relabeling that. Instead of calling it me time, I want you to think about it as battery charging time or energy up time or resilience time. And I know that sounds small to just sort of rebrand it and relabel it, but that's really what it is. And if you can get into the mindset of thinking of that time as having a distinct boundary and as being important to you, you can then take that same kind of muscle memory, that same skill, and you can start creating some additional boundaries, maybe saying that you're not going to work past a certain time, in the evening, because you already work really long hours, and setting a boundary there. It's all about really being more and more comfortable choosing for yourself where you're going to draw the line. Because here's the thing with work-life balance, work-life integration, whatever we want to call it, nobody is ever going to come to you and say, you know what? I think you've been working too much. I think you need to stop working at this time, or I think you need to take 2 hours for yourself this weekend and really, just relax and tune off, turn off and really tune out and, get some relaxation time. We're not going to be permissioned to do that. So we really have to develop that skill set for ourselves. And the easiest way to start is with a time that we think of as being for ourselves.
And then what I would say, I've actually had the very, very fortunate experience of having a boss who did that, who said, you're working too much. You need to take time off. You need to not answer emails over the weekend.
I think we all want to work for this boss.
Oh, absolutely. What we need to start doing is being that for other women and for other people, just in general, that as we do move up in leadership, not just role modeling the kind of work-life integration for ourselves, but also giving permission, giving kind of voice to other people's needs to do the same.
Absolutely.
So hopefully we'll start to see that become more common. I will say it was life-changing. It was truly life-changing when I had a supervisor who said that. So
yeah, it's really powerful.
It is. And I will say that I was willing to work under more difficult circumstances and give my work my all when I had someone who I knew cared about my health and my integration. And so from an overall perspective, I think that I became an even more effective employee because of the willingness to recognize my needs as a human being. So
Absolutely.
hopefully we can start to do that for each other.
Yeah, it engenders tremendous loyalty.
It does. So how can working mothers support themselves as they navigate the unique obstacles that they face?
So one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is really increase the connections that you have to other working moms and to other working parents. So when you are as busy as you are, which is unbelievably busy, and when you have a little bit of self-doubt, when you're thinking, why can't I make this work? Or am I on the right path? The really natural thing that follows from those two things is a bit of isolation. It's of sort of hunkering down a bit and thinking, well, if I just work harder, if I get my calendar really organized, or, if I just get through busy season at work and get out the other side, those things tend to isolate you. And the more isolated you are, the harder working parenthood is. If, on the other hand, you can really reach out and talk to some other working moms, maybe who are in a similar phase of parenting that you are, or who are inside your organization, so they have a lot of insight onto exactly what you're going through, that's great. I also want to encourage you, though, to start talking to other working parents who actually have different personal circumstances or profiles or experiences or ambitions. And I say that because so many of the great tools and techniques that you can get to manage your own life can come from people who see the world just a little bit differently, or who have had different experiences to you. Now, I also want to encourage you to do this, because I have yet, in 11 years of doing this work and in specializing in working parenthood, I have yet to tap a working parent, either for personal advice for myself or on a professional basis, saying, hey, would you spend some time talking to me about tools and techniques that can make working parenthood easier? I have yet to find a single working parent who says, no, I don't want to talk to you about that. I don't have time for you. It's almost like a secret handshake. Everybody realizes it's difficult and wants to help the other person, no matter how different their lives or perspectives might be. So even if it feels a bit awkward or strange or unusual, go join the working parent employee resource group in your organization, or find if there's a mom's group that's being run out of your pediatrician's office, or if you're a member of a faith-based community or a community center or wherever. Hook into those different networks of working parents. Start asking questions, because you're going to realize that all the feelings that you have about working motherhood are really normal. And you're going to get a lot of practical backup and a lot of support and a lot of encouragement that's going to make this whole process so much easier.
And sometimes just getting a different perspective makes all the difference, because we really do start to be able to maybe take ourselves out of our situation and look at it from a new angle, or approach it with a new technique that we learned from someone else. So absolutely, we all do better with support. So that's wonderful advice. And so that kind of leads me to my next question. Although you've given us so many great examples, what is your best advice for working mothers?
Yeah, so if I had just one piece of advice for working moms, it would be this. I want you to really take charge of and own your working parent template. Now, your working parent template is very simply the sort of collage-like or mosaic-like picture you have in your head as to what it means to be a working mom, and even more specifically, what you think it means to be a good working parent. And that picture is probably a little subconscious. You don't think about it so directly, but it's very, very strong, and it really influences your thinking and your feelings and your decisions. And that picture is made up of all the different bits and pieces of advice and observations and experiences you've had with working parenthood over time. And let's just give a specific example here. Let's say you had a working mom yourself, as I did. My mom was a teacher, and she worked really, really hard. And she came home from work every day at a reasonable hour, 4:30, 5 o'clock, and made dinner for me and my sister and sat down with us to eat it, and was available for homework help in the evenings and to watch TV with us and all that kind of stuff. Maybe you had a similar experience with a working parent in your family of origin. And that's wonderful. And that person's a role model, and that thinking belongs in your thinking about working parenthood. But if you don't adapt that thinking and use it for your own purposes, then you're in for some kind of rough sledding, because you may find yourself thinking, well, gee, I should be able to stop work every day at 4, 5, 6 o'clock, the way my own mom did. And I should be available to the kids each evening throughout the evening. And I should be cooking them dinner. And I shouldn't be on email in the evening when I should be focused on my kids. Should. The burden of should is huge. And if you're thinking, should I raise my hand for that next big promotion? Well, the friends in my social media group tell me I shouldn't be doing that. Their influence, their ideas, their support for you is there. It's real and it can be wonderful. But I want you to really push back on and understand your shoulds, because they can control you rather than you controlling them. And they can make you feel all kinds of really kind of burdened. So instead, I want you to take charge of your working parent template. I want you to think about all the different experiences you've had, from your family of origin to your early career training to what you see about working parenthood on your favorite Netflix show. And I want you to just maybe take an hour or so, kind of jot those things down onto a piece of paper and say, here's what really fuels this picture of how I think about working parenthood. Then I want you to step back from the picture and say, what's the picture I want from my own working mom experience? And maybe it's not going to be getting home at 5:30 every evening, because that's not realistic for my role. Maybe it's not cooking for the kids each evening because you don't like to cook, or you work really long hours at the hospital and you can't make it home in time to actually make dinner. So you're going to do a lot of takeout. Whatever that case is, make that template your own. Stop thinking about all these shoulds and start thinking about what works for you, your resources, your family, your career, your ambitions, your children's unique needs. Do what works for that, and you're going to find all of working motherhood just get that much easier.
And I think that also really emphasizes the fact too, that who we're comparing ourselves to, because that's oftentimes what's driving some of that template, may not be realistic for the situation that you're in. So when I think of family of origin, for example, your mom may not have even had email.
Absolutely.
I know in my situation, my mom didn't have email. We didn't have a computer in the home. We didn't have a cell phone where you were always accessible. And so if I built my template based on that, I automatically have discrepancy between what work life is today versus that template. So I think it's, really recognizing that a lot of the times our templates are based on things that are different. And so we really need to understand why we believe what we believe, or what we should do. And then also reflect on how we can change it to really fit what we want our life to look like.
Absolutely. Maybe your family of origin was a sole breadwinner family, and now you're part of a dual career couple. There's so many different ways in which your life can look different than your parents did, or that your friends currently do, or what you see on social media, etc. And the point is to really get into the driver's seat in terms of your own experience and say, this is the direction that I want to go because it works for me.
And then be kind to yourself as you move towards that, as opposed to kind of expecting it to happen all in one moment. That this is something that evolves over time, and that requires, as you said, kind of driving towards it. It requires some in-course corrections as we move towards our ultimate goal.
Absolutely.
What we want our life to look like. So as a last question, how can women support other working mothers?
So I think the most powerful, specific way in which women in workplaces or community situations or settings can support our other working mothers is by asking some open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are ones that aren't pointed, they're not too personal, they're not crossing over a line or invading somebody's privacy, but they signal and convey concern, empathy, interest, and openness. And they allow a conversation to start. So if you are in a company or organization where there is, let's say, a brand new mom who's just joined the organization or who's just back from leave, one of the most powerful things you can do is to say, you've been here for a month now, or you've been back from leave for a month now. How are you getting on? You're not implicating yourself and saying, I'm here to be your, full-time executive coach. You're not saying, I can, take care of your kids for you. You're not over-promising or intruding into that person's life or onto your own time in any way. You're simply conveying that there is a community of people who are going through same and who are willing to trade tips, to support, to be part of the conversation. That's what really changes culture and what allows every working mom to feel a little bit more supported. So get out there and talk to other people and basically say, how are you doing? What's going on? Is there anything you want to ask me about the experience I've had as a working mom? I'm happy to discuss it with you. Those small things can yield really, really large results.
Excellent, excellent. And I think it also allows voices to be heard. I know in some of my conversations with working moms, there's a sense that I have to keep that side of me hidden because I have to keep it separate. And yet it is part of my identity. It is part of who I am. And so even a simple question of, how are you getting on allows me to give voice to that very important role in my life. So
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Exactly. I coach and advise a lot of working moms who are unique in their organizations, meaning that there aren't a lot of other working moms in their field or in their function or their team, et cetera. And what I hear from so many of them is the hardest part about this is that I'm not connected to other people, or nobody else here is like me, or I can't talk with other people about this. And by asking those open-ended questions, you really sort of break that problem and you allow for a conversation to happen. And that's why I think they're so powerful.
Wonderful. Well, I truly thank you for your time and your expertise. And I know our audience will just get so much out of it. So once again, we just hope that everybody can take some of these wonderful tips and tricks and use them as they approach the multiple roles that they are attempting to integrate during a time in which there's a lot of change occurring. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk about all these things as a coach and as a working mom myself.
The Mothers Leading the Way team is grateful for the support of the Jane Nelson Institute for Women's Leadership at Texas Women's University, as well as Positive Leadership at positiveleadership.com.